So this is my what I've learned in African American communication this semester. Few things that stuck out to me when I wrote in my paper. The three main topics were white privilege, um, communication competence, and invisibility syndrome. And I think the reason these stuck out to me, and it's definitely something that I would write to my future self, is because I've seen them all firsthand. You know, I'm a Caucasian male. When I was a kid, before I knew what these things were, I wouldn't really draw any attention to it because I didn't know what they were. But now with this class, it's raised some awareness with me, and I really understand white privilege is not something that I am proud of. It's not something that any white person should really be proud of. It's not something we can really control. It's something that is inherently instilled in us from generations of hatred and racism. And when the civil rights movement happened and things started to even out as far as race goes, when people were having to hire people in the workplaces that were colored, that were African American, when they started doing that kind of stuff and started even in the playing field, people that came out of that era who were white wanted to keep an advantage on the Caucasian side. And that is so wrong in every way, but that is like a playbook that has been passed down generation to generation. And it is still alive today. Like I said, I'm not proud of that, but if I was going to tell my 14-year-old self anything about that, it would just be recognize it. Be conscious of it. Don't be really thankful for it, but understand that it exists. Understand that it's something you have to be held accountable for, even though you had nothing to do with it. It's just one of those things that it is what it is. When it comes to invisibility syndrome, I went to a private Catholic school my whole life. I grew up all white faces. But when I segued into high school, it was still majority white students, classmates, teammates, but there was a heavier African American influence. And when these African Americans make the decision to go to a predominantly white high school, they take a huge leap of faith in the fact that you're not going to see many African American students. You're not going to see many African American administrators or teachers. And because of that, you could see that some of them, just by talking to them, and how if they had a bad experience, they did really feel invisible. Their feelings, what they thought about things, what their needs were as students, as athletes, as people, were kind of at times put on the back burner. Especially if that African American didn't play a sport. And that's one way that African Americans have a way of escaping that invisibility syndrome, is by playing and participating in athletics. I found that. And my 14-year-old self, I would tell, be conscious of that. Be aware of that. Make sure you know that's not okay. And the last thing is communication competence. I think that it is very vital and important to exercise empathy and understand that there is a reason African Americans communicate and carry themselves the way they do. They are split. They are a split individual. They're African and American. Americans come from a very collective society. African Americans come from a very individualistic society. And in combination with communication, you get a little bit of both. So this was just a little bit of what I learned this semester. This is what I would tell my 14-year-old self. And I hope this fulfilled the requirement for this video. Thank you very much.